it started with rain. Not the dramatic kind that slams against windows and pulls leaves from trees in great, cinematic gusts, but the slow, persistent kind that dulls the sound of the world, that makes everything quieter, closer, softer. The kind of rain that doesn't announce itself, just arrives and stays, like an old friend who knows how to enter a room without being seen. He knocked around 9 p.m. I had just settled into the couch, still wearing my coat, one hand around a cup of tea gone lukewarm, the other holding a book I hadn't actually read in 20 minutes. When I opened the door, he was standing there, hair damp, hands shoved into the pockets of a jacket that had seen better seasons. He was calm. Not apologetic. Not eager. Just tired. The way people are when they've run out of places to go. He said his apartment had flooded. That he'd called someone to fix it, but the ceiling was leaking, and the landlord wouldn't answer, and he didn't want to call anyone else, and he didn't really have anyone else. And then, simply, could I stay here? Just for the night? We weren't strangers. Not completely. He was a friend of a friend, someone I'd met 3 or 4 times at dinner parties where everyone knew each other too well and talked too loud. I remembered thinking he was the kind of man who noticed small things, the tilt of a wine glass, the way someone laughed when they didn't mean to, but never said much about them. He was polite. Present. A little removed, like someone who lived slightly off to the side of his own story. So I said yes. I gave him a towel, a dry shirt from the donation pile, a blanket, and the couch. I didn't ask questions. He didn't offer stories. We moved around each other with a kind of careful respect, the way 2 people do when they both understand that intimacy isn't the same thing as closeness. That first night, we barely spoke. But something about the sound of him breathing in the next room made the apartment feel less hollow. In the morning, he was already making coffee when I woke up. He poured 2 cups, as if it were routine, as if this wasn't borrowed space. We drank quietly. He offered to leave. I told him he could stay another night, just in case. The rain hadn't stopped. The second night, he helped me carry laundry up the stairs. The third, he fixed the wobbly leg on the kitchen table. The fourth, I came home from work to find the fridge cleaned, the trash taken out, and a note on the counter that read, "I bought more tea. Hope I got the right kind." I never asked him to stay. And he never asked to stay again. He simply didn't leave. Even when he wasn't home, when he was out walking, or running errands, or meeting someone I didn't know, I still felt him there. In the rearranged spices, the shoes by the door, the second coffee cup beside mine. In the extra towel hanging in the bathroom. In the quiet humming I sometimes heard from the other room, low and tuneless, the kind of sound people make only when they feel safe enough to forget they're making it. It wasn't until the 7th day that I realized I had stopped waiting for him to go. And somewhere in the middle of all that silence and soft routine, I had started thinking of the apartment not as mine, but as ours. He didn't stay because of a decision. He stayed because of the way routines begin to blur, not in forgetfulness, but in comfort. At first, I still thought of his presence in the space as temporary, like a coat hanging by the door on a rainy day, familiar, necessary, but something that could be taken away again at any moment. But time has a way of softening sharp lines. His presence, once noticeable, became quiet. Seamless. Like background music that fades until you realize it's been playing all along, setting the mood for every moment without demanding attention. By the 2nd week, I no longer reached for a second coffee cup. It was already there. Sometimes I poured his. Sometimes he poured mine. I stopped checking to see if he was still on the couch in the mornings. I just knew he would be. And when he wasn't, when he went out early or stayed out late, I felt it not as absence, but as something simply paused. He didn't talk much about the past. I never asked. He told stories the way some people water plants, cautiously, only when necessary, only enough to keep them alive. I learned that he once spent 2 years living in a coastal town where the wind was stronger than the people. That his grandmother had raised him on tea and poetry. That he had once written a love letter he never sent, and still kept it folded inside a book he hadn't opened in years. I didn't need the details. I already knew the important things. The way he touched objects as if they had memory. The way he stood in doorways for just a second longer than most, like he was always checking whether he truly belonged in the next room. The way he hummed without realizing it when he was making dinner, not a song, just a sound, something shaped like comfort. One night I came home to find my books rearranged, not by title or author, but by mood, gentle fiction on the left, heavier stories on the right, poetry sprinkled in between like commas. It didn't feel invasive. It felt like someone had been paying close attention. And then, on a Wednesday evening, I woke to stillness. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing had been moved. The apartment looked the same. But the air was too quiet. The second pillow was cold. His jacket was gone from the chair. His shoes weren't by the door. No note. No text. Just, gone. I waited. I told myself stories. That he'd gone out for a walk. That he'd be back by morning. That maybe he needed space. That it wasn't what it felt like, that he hadn't just slipped out of my life like a bookmark falling from a page. But he didn't come back the next day. Or the next. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just moved through the apartment like someone pacing a place that once had music in it. His toothbrush stayed in the bathroom. His book remained on the table. I didn't move anything. As if by keeping the outline of him intact, I could hold on to what wasn't yet finished. And then, on the third day, I found an envelope just inside the front door, slipped through the mail slot, resting gently on the rug, as if even its landing had been careful. No name on the front. Just my address, in his handwriting. Inside, one piece of paper. No envelope lining, no scent. Just words. I didn't know how to ask to stay. I didn't know if I was allowed to stay. So I waited until staying felt like breathing. But I left because it mattered too much. Because I was afraid of needing something that wasn't mine to need. But now I know, I don't want to be somewhere else. I want to be there. With you. Taped to the bottom of the letter was the spare key I'd left in the bowl by the door, the one he'd used 100 times without asking. I sat with the letter for a long time. Hours, maybe. I read it again and again, my thumb tracing over the creases where he had folded it, carefully, not neatly, as if even the paper should feel what he was feeling. I thought of all the things he never said out loud, and how sometimes the softest truths are the ones spoken in absence. I didn't call. I didn't write back. I just left the door unlocked. He returned that night. No dramatic gestures. No apologies. No suitcase. Just him, standing in the doorway like someone who had finally stopped running. He looked at me. I looked at him. And then, he walked in. Now, the apartment feels different. Not heavier. Not even more full. Just, balanced. As if it had been tilted all this time and only now finally settled on its foundation. He doesn't ask to stay anymore. Because now, we both know. He already has. And sometimes, when I make tea in the evening and he's in the other room humming under his breath, I find myself smiling at nothing. Because I'm not waiting anymore. He's here. Even when he isn't.